Hi, my name is Hayley and this is my poster, Unforb-gettable Though Near a Farm, Bee Flower Preference in the Northern Great Plains. The Northern Great Plains contains habitat that is critical for populations of both wild and managed bees. However, large-scale land use change has led to a loss of flowering plants that are crucial to these insects. Data used in this study was originally collected to determine the amount of floral resources available to both wild and managed bees. However, it is also useful in determining their floral preferences. By knowing these, conservation planting efforts can be tailored to maximize benefits to wild and/or domestic bees. The goals of this project were to visualize the availability of floral resources to wild and managed bees, summarize the plant usage seen by these bees, as well as to determine these bees' most preferred plant species while considering covariates such as the native status of the plant, the bee type being wild or honeybees, and the seasonal availability of such plants. Data used in this project was collected in the summers of 2015 through 2019. As this study was being run concurrently to another one focused on honeybee health, transects were all within 4 kilometers of commercial honeybee apiaries. 3 rounds of survey were conducted each summer to account for varying bloom times of different species. Figure 1 shows a map of the transect sites, and Figure 2 shows an example transect. In each transect, the number of flowering stems of each species were recorded, along with a number of wild and honeybees observed visiting. Preference was then determined by ranking the usage of a plant, or how many bees visited, as well as the abundance, or how many stems it had. The difference between these two rankings indicated preference. Lower scores were more preferred as it showed a higher usage on fewer stems. R was then used to analyze data and create graphics. Figure 4 is a bar plot of the mean stems per transect of each of the top 40 most abundant species. Alfalfa, yellow sweet clover, and white sweet clover, the top 3 most abundant taxa, are volunteer species. These often grow in dense patches in field margins and along roadside ditches without needing to be seeded. This makes them both abundant and highly utilized by pollinators. This Sankey diagram depicts the total number of bee visitations per plant species over the course of our survey. There is a higher number of honeybee visitations observed due to the proximity of commercial apiaries. Wild bee visitation was seen on 76 of 92 plant species. Meanwhile, honeybees were observed on 72 of 92 plant species. There were 20 species visited only by wild bees and 16 visited only by honeybees. As the species of wild bees were not recorded, the plant usage of individual wild bee species cannot be estimated. This may account for the wider range of utilization seen in the wild bee category. However, across species, there is a broader floral usage by wild bees, while honeybee utilization aligns more with stem abundance. Tables 1 and 2 show the top 5 most preferred species by both wild and honeybees. Overlap was prevalent in the species preferred by both bee types, suggesting that in areas with high managed bee populations, both groups utilize similar resources. Preferred species shifted by season, likely due to varying bloom times. Wild bee preference shifted more between seasons, while honeybees showed a greater preference for the same plants. This aligns with usage trends, in which honeybees used plants with high stem abundance, and wild bees saw a more varied distribution. However, only one of the most utilized species appeared in the most preferred species. Both honeybees and wild bees showed a preference for native plants, suggesting that these might be more effective in conservation seed mixes. While high usage was observed on volunteer species such as alfalfa and yellow sweet clover, these species were not highly preferred. Effective conservation efforts should take this into account while seeding in order to better meet their conservation goals. Many of the highly preferred species in this study had fewer than 5 stems recorded. For one example, 1 stem might be recorded and 1 bee observed. This might give a relatively high preference and, in theory, is a sign that this plant would be more preferred than one with 15 stems and 1 bee sighted. However, due to the limited nature of this data, the actual usage of this species is still unknown. Further research is needed to determine the strength of preference for such plants. Finally, as this study was conducted near commercial apiaries, there was a high proportion of honeybees observed. It is still unknown whether wild bees and managed bees face competition for floral resources, especially in areas dominated by plant species preferred by both bee types. Further experiments could shift the number of honeybees in an area with large amounts of preferred flowers and examine any changes in plant preference. Data used in this study were collected and provided by the U.S. Geological Survey. Further, this work is supported by the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Special thanks to Cheyenne Lindsay for her support and assistance.